Hey everyone, I hope all is well. So today I thought it'd be a great idea to explain how I mixed the track for one of my colleagues with his permission. I'll be sharing it here today on YouTube. I really just wanted to explain my process and try to help as much as possible so that I can not only help him but others as well. So I thought the best way to explain my mix is basically going through each detail. So right now I'm going to go through each element on this track that he sent me and explain how I processed everything. And then at the very end I will do an A-B comparison where I'll be playing his version that he sent me, and then I'll be playing the version that I made, and so that you can hear the differences. So please bear with me as I go through this, and because I'll be going basically non-stop, so I apologize if I make any blunders or anything, but here we go. So first off, I'll go with these atmospheric bird sounds that were in the track. I'll play them real quick for you. I hope you can hear that, but I didn't really do any processing on those. I like to keep them as is, because when it comes to field recordings, I like to just preserve the three-dimensional feel of it, and adding processing kind of gets rid of that natural vibe. So I didn't do any processing on that. I just did a very subtle volume adjustment there. You don't really want it to be too outstanding in the front of the mix, so I didn't do too much with that. But I mainly did a lot of processing on the chord synth. I actually ended up sidechaining it to two other sounds. From what I recall, I think I sidechained it to this flute as well as the main melody. That is because I noticed that there was some sort of frequency conflictions going on. So I used some sidechaining to counteract that. In the future, I would probably recommend to probably work on your sound selection, as well as, if you're getting this sort of issue, is just to work on your sound selection and also experiment with pitching up these sounds either an octave up or down, because that will help spread out the frequency ranges so that they're not trying to occupy the same space. But in order to preserve this mix, I didn't want to modify anything pitch wise, so I just worked with what I got, and I ended up using the Fruity limiter here to do some side chaining. But as you can see, I use this Fruity delay bank. If you listen back on the the difference between having no effects and then having the delay on it, you'll notice that it adds some fullness to it. So I'll play it back. Where's the chord here? So this is without any effects. And then this is with the delay. You can't really hear too much of a difference, but I really added the delay bank after I added all these other effects, because I noticed that it added some more fullness to it. But if you hear, let me just do an A-B comparison between how it sounds originally and then with everything on it, and you'll notice that there's a lot more movement, and it's a lot more, in the end, when you actually add all the instrumentation together, it sounds a lot more smoother and a lot more movement, and it's more immersive. So this is how it sounds with all the processing. And I noticed that when I was doing this, that there was a lot of movement left and right, a little bit too much, to the point where my ears got a little irritated. So what I did was I duplicated the chord synth here and here with the same effects, but I edited some panning. I changed the panning, as well as I swapped the left and right channels. So by doing that, it kind of does this crisscross effect, so that your ears are not really irritated by having the sound too much on your left or too much on your right because they're crisscrossing all the time. So I was able to still capture that immersive vibe and that movement without irritating your ears. So with that, I'll play those two together. Let's see if I can find those. So that works actually really well, especially when you have everything else going. You still have that little bit of irritation in your ear, but it's not as much. It's a little more subtle, but when you have everything playing, it just works perfectly in my opinion. The I also noticed that the fruity flanges seems to be, just this is like a side note, this seems to be like the chorus effect on the Hummer plugin. This is just like, it seems to be like the chorus module of the Hummer plugin, which was pretty cool discovery. It's like, because I always wanted to use the surround flanger preset on other sounds other than the ones in Hummer, and I finally found it. So I tend to use this quite a bit now, the fruity flanges, to add the surround flanger effects on sounds. I also added an depth for Plux preset, retro colors preset on this chord synth to add more depth and three-dimensional feel to it. I added the Soothe too. I was experimenting with different presets. I found this Carve Out Reverb lows using sidechain preset really cleaned up the sound. I'll give you a little A/B comparison on that. So this is without the Soothe 2, and then this is with the Soothe 2. It thins out the sound a little bit, but I think that works better when in comparison to the previous, when the whole instrumental is playing. It gives more room frequency wise to the rest of the instrumental. It gives more space. And then that's about it for processing for the chord synth. Let's go to the flute next. I only added a reverb to the flute simply because it was just way too dry. This is how the flute sounded originally without any processing. Especially near the end where it kind of ends abruptly. That's why I wanted to add some reverb. Usually I automate the reverb so that it's not like happening all the time, but I think it worked in this case, having the reverb play the whole time. Usually I would automate the reverb to happen only near this tail end, but since the flute was just dry in general, I just added the reverb to the whole thing, and this is how it sounds on its own. So I also, in addition to that, I also modified some of the stair separation on a bunch of the elements. This I adjusted just to try to make certain sounds a bit more wider and adjust their position in the mix, front and back. For some elements that were more sub-frequency, I created more of a mono vibe to them just to clean up the mix, because you don't want sub-frequencies stereo most of the time. So that's that. I also actually did not do any processing on this field recording of the forest and rain, again just like I did with the bird, because I don't want to get rid of that three-dimensional feel of those field recordings. I notice if you process those field recordings, it kind of gets rid of that natural three-dimensional vibe, especially if you edit the stereo separation. That kind of ruins the field recording. for the kick sounded a bit too thin. I wanted to add more weight to it, so I added some retro color, some saturation, cassette saturation on it. I just used this, basically this preset, and modified it just slightly. So the kick sounded like this without the effect, and then this is with the effect. A bit more sub in there, a bit more weight to it. Just subtle, but that's what it's all about, the small details, and then the small details add into something more significant. The next thing is the melody. Let's see what I did with the melody here. Retro color, I added some vinyl 3, adjusted the magnitude on that. And then this is the piano. I noticed the piano was conflicting with some of the frequencies as well. That's why I think I also used some side chaining to the chords to kind of control that a little better, because it was very difficult to get the volume levels right, so I had to use some side chaining in order to assist with that. But in addition to that, I use some reverb. So if you hear the piano, let's go to the piano here and just get rid of all the processing so you can hear how it sounded originally. So it sounds good, but I thought it needed some more thickness to it. It sounded a bit thin, and I wanted to sound just have longer notes to it. And the way to add artificial longer notes to a sound, in my opinion, or in my experience, is to just try to add a little bit of reverb to it, to add more of a reverb tail. So what I did was I did this, and this is how it sounds in the end. So that overall I thought sounded a lot better. It gives a more natural tone to it, a little bit of imperfections to make it sound more natural. Alright, so let's go to Rain. Again, another field recording that I didn't add any processing to. Razor. When it comes to effects and like pads, I like to add movement, and this is no exception. The Razor, I added some reverb to add more of a reverb tail to have it transition a little better from note to note, and then the Panomatic to add some movement to it. So this is, and I also widened it with the stereo separation. So with no effects on it on the mixer, this is how it sounds. Oops, wrong one. I apologize. The Razor's right here. So I definitely wanted to add more movement to it to give it more of a purpose. So I'm going to do this right here and enable it. So it moves side to side, adds more bit of action to the song, a little more interesting. Alright, and then next one is the sub bass. I side chained the sub bass and this respace to, I think, the melody. Or let's see, where is it? I side chained it to something, to the kick. Yeah, I side chained, I'm not sure what the order is, side chaining to what, but I side chained the kick with the sub bass and the respace, just because the respace was conflicting with the kick, and basically the sub basses were conflicting with the kick in frequency, so I used some side chaining to have the kick cut through the mix a little bit better. It helped control the mix a little bit better, you know, like bring the sub down when it's not really needed, and then bring it back up when there's a little bit more space in the mix to accommodate it. And then let's see here, we got the vocal, which I just added a female vocals full range preset from Soothe 2 that worked perfectly for it. I'm kind of like a preset monkey, so I use a lot of presets. not too technical in that aspect. I usually use my ears. I'm not too technical with plugins too much. I use a lot of presets. So I use that to kind of to control the not the dissonance. What do you call it? The transients in the vocals, the sibilance. I mean, to control the sibilance a little bit better, keep it more smooth, make it more smooth and silky sounding. This is how the vocals sounded without Soothe 2. Let me find the vocal here. Some multiple vocals actually. Which one am I looking at here? The center one. Alright, here we go.
ইচ্ছে করে মনটা আমার অযুত স্বপ্ন বুনুক স্মৃতির ওই মণি মুকুরে.
I mean, the sibilance isn't bad, but when listening on like huge stereo systems, you'll definitely hear the sibilance. So I am very cautious about, or very intent on that, or like very attentive to that. I mean,
একটা ছবি থাকুক.
So this is with it enabled.
ডাহুক করুণ সুরে ডাকুক টল টলে ওই নদীর জলে.
So it's subtle, but it definitely makes a difference. Also, when I mix these 3 vocal stems, I just basically use the same effect, Soothe 2 on all 3, and then just adjusted the volumes to accommodate how I heard the sounds. Here I brought down the left and right just a little bit lower than the center, and that seemed to work just perfectly for what I was going for. That covers it in terms of the mix effects that I put on everything. Alright, in terms of the master, I don't normally do this, but I put RC20 retro color on the master. I know that's kind of forbidden. You don't want to put like what is it, saturation on the whole track, but I find that helped glue everything together, especially if you use it in just small amounts. So that helped, I think, make it more cohesive and thicker. I added a parametric EQ to here to remove the unnecessary frequencies from below 30 Hz and above 18 kHz, just to clean it up just a little bit. I use Goldfast EQ, which is an AI EQ, which helps with tonal balance. I lowered the brightness here to kind of, because it sounded a little bit too bright and happy, and kind of, sometimes you want to adjust the brightness of a track, make it darker or brighter based off the mood of the track. If the track is a dark song, you don't want to have it sound bright, otherwise it's like the song sounds happy but it's not happy at the same time. So I like to lower the brightness just a tad on some of the tracks. Soothe again to add to remove the mud on the track, as the preset says, and that works pretty well. And then lastly, I did some Ozone 10 elements. I'm still kind of a newbie in terms of mastering, so bear with me, but I used Ozone elements at the end to do subtle EQ here. I find that the EQ, just doing a subtle EQ here, kind of keeps everything glued together a little bit better. I did disable the width here because I find that adding some width with this plugin kind of gets rid of the 3-dimensional feel of some of the elements. And then I also brought down the dynamics to the lowest setting here, which according to the Ozone Elements online manual, putting it all the way down to the bottom gives it a loudness of -14 LUFS, which shouldn't be the albeit rule. Like you shouldn't keep that as fact. You shouldn't make every song -14 LUFS, but I like doing that simply because I like a more dynamic mix. And a lot of times when I do bring it up higher than this, It does get rid of some of the details in the track, and I personally like the details over a loud sound. You can always bring up the volume knob if you need to, but that's just my opinion. Other than that, I think that covers everything. And as I said before in the beginning, I'll do an A/B comparison of what my colleague sent me as his final, and then you'll see the version that I just shared here in its entirety. And I think that covers everything. Let me just check my notes real quick, because I did write a bunch of notes which I ended up not even using, but I want to make sure I touch on everything, make sure I'm not missing anything, because I really want to make sure I'm detailed. Make sure that I want to help as much as possible in terms of all this. Alright, other than that, I think I may have explained it, but I also did some volume automation here. I like sometimes doing a little bit of a fade in on sounds to make it come in a little nicer. And then I also did a automation on the reverb delay for one of the sounds, specifically the piano, to have it fade out a little better. And then I also changed the arrangement of the song just a tad, because I noticed that that, for example, the piano was playing along with the flute in this section here, and it just was conflicting. Like the melodies and the counter they just weren't jiving together. So I stopped the piano a bit earlier, and I stopped the piano right before this flute, had it fade away, and then brought the flute in. And then I also had like this reverb delay at the end, kind of add some subtle details. But again, you can hear that all in the A/B comparison. And again, the reason why I do these non-stop is basically I like to keep a natural vibe to these tutorials, so it's kind of like you talking to me in person and not just like a scripted video, you know what I mean? So I hope that you found this enjoyable, and that's about it. If you have any questions or you wanted me to touch on a few things, feel free to ask in the comments. I would gladly help you out no matter what. And yeah, have a great day, guys.
ইচ্ছে করে মনটা আমার অযুত স্বপ্ন বুনুক, স্মৃতির ওই মণি মুকুরে একটা ছবি থাকুক, ভর দুপুরে একটা ডাহুক করুণ সুরে ডাকুক, টলটলে ওই নদীর জলে ঝাঁপ দিয়ে মন পড়ুক, চুরি করে কাউকে দেখে আশ নাই আর মিটুক, তুমি আমি মিলে না হয় একটু কান কথা রটুক, যখন তখন নিঝুম দ্বীপে ঝুম বৃষ্টি নামুক, চোখে আমার অশ্রুবন্যা ঝড় ছড়িয়ে ঝরুক। ইচ্ছে করে বুকের মাঝে একটু ব্যথা করুক, হৃদয় আমার ছটফটিয়ে তোমার নামটি বলুক। ইচ্ছে করে মনটা আমার অযুত স্বপ্ন বুনুক, স্মৃতির ওই মণি মুকুরে একটা ছবি থাকুক, ভর দুপুরে একটা ডাহুক করুণ সুরে ডাকুক, টল টলে ওই নদীর জলে ঝাঁপ দিয়ে মন পড়ুক, চুরি করে কাউকে দেখে আশ নাই আর মিটুক, তুমি আমি মিলে না হয় একটু কান কথা রটুক, যখন তখন নিঝুম দ্বীপে ঝুম বৃষ্টি নামুক, চোখে আমার অশ্রুবন্যা ঝরঝরিয়ে ঝরুক। ইচ্ছে করে বুকের মাঝে একটু ব্যথা করুক, হৃদয়ে আমার ছটফটিয়ে তোমার নামটি বলুক।